Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another attempted episode of True Story Live. For those of you that were here last week, we got waylaid by some technical issues, and hopefully we've got it worked out. But it's still kind of in a tentative place on Glenn's end with some internet issues, kind of going in and out, but. I think the power issue that he had last week, from what I understand, it seems to be working, and there hasn't been another crash since last Sunday evening here. It's a different day for him, obviously, but for us, it's when we do the broadcast Sunday evening. So it's Sunday evening again, and we're going to give it another shot. So tonight's topic: when to end relationships. It's time to say goodbye. And so if you heard a portion of last week's broadcast, this will be kind of a repeat for some of you. And so we apologize to anyone who doesn't want to hear the same thing twice. But, as is true with many broadcasts that we've had to do again, well, not many. I think we had one that we did 3 or 4 times before we got it right with technical issues.
Yeah.
It was different every time. That's the point, because we don't usually there's a write up that we go by, but the way that the write up is presented and the questions and the personalities and all that are never the same twice. So you have that to look forward to at least. All right, so we're going to say hello to everyone in the chat, but first we'll introduce the panel. For those of you that are stopping by for the first time or listening to playback, thank you for being here and listening to our little corner of the YouTube world and our show True Story Live. So I'm Jason Cripps, and I am the host of the broadcast. And then also joining me, my co-host on the panel. I'll first introduce our producer and friend from Australia, Glenn. Glenn, say hello to the people, please.
Howdy. Hi. Good
Howdy.
evening, good morning, whatever.
Do you feel like doing your Texan/Southern accent for people?
Oh no, don't get me
Nah.
laughing.
Nah,
Close one.
nah.
That's a close one.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
tired.
I'm
Oh
Tired.
no, there it is.
There it is a little bit.
I'm
There it is.
so tired.
Oh no.
See, he doesn't even have to say much. There's just a little bit. It's hilarious. That's awesome. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you.
Pleasure.
I'm glad that you're here, and thank you for working on the technical side over there to try to get things worked out. So we appreciate you doing that. All right, and we're going to say hello to my wonderful wife, Jen. Jen, say hello to people.
Hello, peoples. It is a lovely evening to spend with you guys. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and thank you. And we're excited to be back with you guys in the chat, and we'll say hello to those that pop in later. But for the few people that are here already, Jen, say hello to those people for us, please.
Oh, hold on. Lost my screen.
Hmm.
All right, we've got Joel, More Than a Flame. We have Annie, Helene, and I think that might be you, Jason.
Me.
And I haven't seen Glenn in here yet. He's busy.
Yeah.
Hey guys, good to see you.
All right. Well, thank you, Jen. And we are going to start it on up. And let me pull up my thing disappeared as well. There we go. And you get a special treat again for those. Oh, Stephanie just popped in, so we'll say hello to her really quickly. Hello, Stephanie. Welcome
Hey,
back.
Stephanie.
We appreciate you. Glad that you're here. Uh, all right. So Jen is going to do the write up again. She did a great job last week, and she'll get a second attempt at it.
Sweet.
And you'll get to hear her awesome voice. So, Jen, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to really try not to need a drink of water in the middle of this.
Okay.
So we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. You're going to do great.
All right, tonight's topic is paired with the song Breathe, and the link is in the description. Do we ever think that a friendship we have with someone might not be good for us? I know I have held on to many friendships that I had outgrown or that were not good for me anymore. I stumbled across a video by Kati Morton about this very topic, and it was incredibly insightful and eye-opening. And the link to that is below in the description. I watched it multiple times and had many epiphanies about myself in these relationships. I wonder if this is why I've been inclined to twist myself into a pretzel, changing things about myself or suppressing who I am in order to hold on to them. My own people pleasing tendencies had a major role that played into this. Realizing that I had issues in being a people pleaser and that this played a role in the relationships was an important first step in my own growth. When we were younger, or had yet to grow in experience, we might have assumed that friendships will last forever. Maybe these friends were friends with us for all the wrong reasons, rooted in our own place of unhealthiness or naiveté. When we decide to traverse our own path and getting healthier, communicating better, setting boundaries, at times putting ourselves first instead of other people all the time, those friendships may not work anymore. Katie mentions it wasn't about that person being all wrong or I'm all right. We're just different. I had changed, I had shed a skin of a past self, and the things that they liked about me didn't exist anymore. So then those relationships didn't work anymore. Is someone in your life no longer a good fit? Is it possible they never were, but you just didn't see it? Are you putting more effort into a relationship than what is being returned? Not that it has to be stringently equal, but there should be a certain ebb and flow in a relationship and not like a seesaw stuck to one side. With you giving so much and the other person taking it, rarely giving. This specific dynamic can play out in family relationships as well as romantic ones. For me, it was a message from childhood that all relationships were hinged on proving. In what ways was I trying to prove myself and why? For me, it was giving, 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 not expecting anything in return because for me, I wasn't requiring the other person to give anything at all. I believed I wasn't worthy of receiving. This dynamic can be played out in churches. In my past, I had desired to be used by God and serve the church. One of the byproducts I expected was that in getting involved in serving, that relationships with other people would organically happen. When this consistently didn't happen, I ended up feeling used or like something was wrong with me. This dynamic can be played out within families. In my relationship with my family, I love to love them, encourage them, accept them, and I haven't felt like that has been equally given in return. What I've experienced is a family who judges me, who are critical or judgmental, who speak discouraging comments instead of encouraging ones. I have become a person who keeps the focus on them in their lives, but gets incredibly nervous when they ask me questions about me and my life due to their preceding questions and comments. I want my family to know deep down, but my fear of judgment keeps me from opening up. So this leads into some questions, just this sharing. Why do we have friendships? Is it about what we can get or what we can give? Is it right to expect a friend to give it all? Why do we continue to hold on to relationships after we discover there isn't a healthy give and take? Why do we continue to hold on to relationships that are unhealthy for us? Why do people give so much without anything or very little being in return? Why do we accept it when this happens? Friendships and relationships that do work in a healthy way are those where both people are growing in the same direction. How do we know when it's time to let go of what no longer fits? How do we decide which relationships are worth keeping and those that are not? For what I see, more people than not keep the bad ones because they don't have the necessary skills to identify the potentially good ones.
Hmm.
How do you get the necessary skills? How do you identify that you need new skills? If you are a codependent, then meeting another codependent is going to feel right when it should feel wrong. How do you overcome this? Is it not safer to stay the same? What is the prompt for a friend to encourage someone to make the effort or decide they need help? And sometimes people find comfort in self pity. What do you value in the friendships you do have now? How do we know it's not unhealthy? In the friendships we have here, what's in it that makes it healthy and why do we choose that instead of going back to what is easier and safe
Hmm.
or what seems that way? I'm sure each of us has been touched by friendships that have ended. I now look back and wonder why I was so destroyed over a friendship relationship that needed to end and did in order for me to continue growing. We live, we learn, hopefully. Thanks for hanging out with us again tonight to discuss this topic, guys. We hope that the questions we have asked here in the write up have helped you in some way to process some of your own current or past relationships. And this should be said at the end of the show.
It's okay. I do it too. It's quite all
Okay, I'm
right.
like, see you
Right.
guys next week. Bye.
Yeah.
Nope, not quite, Jen.
Yeah. We're just showing the questions. That's it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. So, just as a reminder, Jen wrote the write up, and then Annie and Glenn contributed some things to it. So, thank you, Jen, for writing that and using your voice to read over it. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, so I'm just checking to see if anyone new popped in. I don't see anyone. Okay, and by the way, guys, we really appreciate you coming in the chat and having conversations and dialogue. And as usual, if you'd like us to read anything or you want to share your thoughts or answer each of the questions, that'd be wonderful. And I will peruse the chat. And if anyone wants to make a comment, just put it in there and we will read it on air. And we'll say hello to a newcomer, James Grace. Hello, welcome, James. And everyone, please make James helpful in the chat. Appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Oh, that's Jamie, babe.
Oh, Jamie. Look, see my eyesight is like I
Okay,
didn't
so
see
old.
the E. Jamie is not a newcomer. Well, anyway. Hello, Jamie. Sorry, that's my fault. Thank you for correcting me,
You're welcome.
Jamie. All right, there we go. All right, the first question. We're going to get right into it. Do we ever think that a friendship we have with someone might not be good for us? Do we ever think that a friendship we have with someone might not be good for us? We got this far, at least in the broadcast last week, and I'm not going to keep referring to it, but I just will this one time. And I remember how I answered this question. So nothing has changed from last week as far as my answer for this. I'm sure I'll describe it in a different way. But yes, I went through this. Some of you who have been around for a while will have heard me reference a former friend. His name was Chuck, and I won't use last names, but I met him in the second grade, and we went to school together at two different schools. Ending up my senior year when I left before I graduated and redid my senior at a high school. He did not come with me there. That was in Michigan. But that whole time, I knew him. We weren't always super close. Toward the end, things started to change a little bit. But he was someone that I spent a lot of time around, and he was not a healthy person for me. I can give several examples, but we're trying to finish this up in 2 hours. But let's just say that it was clear to me when I became an older teenager that he was into getting in trouble and some on a path that I didn't want to follow. Let's just say that. And I even at one point had a conversation with him, and I said, "Look, this isn't working out." And he begged me to remain friends with him. And out of my own codependency, my loyalty, and my desire to never be the one to put an end to a relationship at that time, I agreed to remain friends with him. So later, he was the one that rejected me. And narcissists do this all the time. They discard you when they're done, when they feel like they can't get any more supply from you. That's another show. But yes, in answer to this question, do we ever think that a friendship we have with someone might not be good for us? I certainly did. And I wish that I had paid attention to the red flags that I saw at that time, but I didn't. And so it caused more problems, more pain for me later because I did not heed the warnings that were coming. Um, I'm much older and much more mature, and I've learned a lot more in life, and I would not do that same thing again. I don't mean to say that if I notice one red flag, depending on what kind of flag it is, with a person, that I'll just break off friendship. That's a overreaction, in my opinion. It would be for me, but it's just different. You know,
Yeah.
I became careful to make friends for a long time, and even that's more open. You know, my icon is open, and that's why that's my desire. I want to be open. I want to make new friends. I have a desire to get to know various people. I've always had that desire. But when people are not good for you, it's good to cut and run before it causes more damage. All right, so there's my long rambling answer to the first one. What do you think, Jen? Do we ever think that a friendship we have with someone might not be good for us? What do you say to that one?
What time frame are we talking? Like currently or back in the 90s?
Anytime, anytime.
Man, back in the past, I feel like I didn't have that thought cross my mind at all ever.
Right, right.
Like to be introspective that way and think, wow, I wonder if these. Well, no, I will say, no, it's still not within. Okay, no, that's the answer's no. Now, yeah, the last 3 years and maybe a little bit prior to that, I've been,
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Well, you were introspective back then, but you may not have seen this the way you do now
no,
with
it's
the
different.
toxicity of certain people and friendships that may not be good for you.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jen. I
yeah.
appreciate that. And Glenn, what about you? Now, last week you shared that not that friendships aren't important to you, but you only have a certain number of friends, which I think can sometimes be good. But do we ever think that a friendship we have with someone might not be good for us? What do you say?
I can only relate to the dark, dim, distant past.
Right. Right.
I had friendships in inverted commas with people that I knew were not good for me, but the overriding thing was acceptance. Therefore, I threw this is not good for me out the window and
Hmm.
went with I want to be accepted. But underneath, I always knew they weren't good for me.
Right.
Ah,
Nowadays, it's a case.
Yeah.
Why bother? I think we've got a pretty good idea what's
Yeah.
good and what's not.
Sure.
yes.
Taking a fair bit of work to get there, but yeah.
Sure. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's good when we live and learn for sure. Hello to Kellyanne Dean. Welcome to the chat, and everyone make Kellyanne. She's not a stranger to True Story Live, but just make sure and say hello to her if you would. Thanks for stopping by. Okay, so the next one is someone in your life no longer a good fit, and is it possible they never were, but you just didn't see it? Let's start with you, Jen, if you're ready for this one. These
Oh,
two.
repeat it. I'm sorry. I was looking at the chat. My
That's
bad.
okay. That's okay. Is someone in your life no longer a good fit? Is it possible they never were, but you just didn't see it?
Um, yeah, like I had a current friend that sort of fits into that position
Yeah, I'm sure.
where it was, I don't know. It's like when you meet people. I don't know if you guys get this, but sometimes I feel that me and another person would really click, and
Sure.
sometimes it feels a little off. Like maybe you're not as common with each other to be able to have that comfortableness quickly. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You have to be careful with that, um, but it just never really clicked, never really fit. And
Yeah.
you and I were talking about this the other day, and I thought,
Yes.
I'm not upset about it. I think we just are in two different places, and we just
Right.
didn't really
Mhm.
mesh with
Yeah.
where we're at,
Sure.
presently. So that's one example.
Okay. Yeah, because you kind of already answered a little bit the second part of this. It's possible they never were, but you didn't see it. I don't think so for you now. What do you say to that? Like you were saying that back in the day, a long time ago, you didn't see it. I mean, you couldn't see that they might not be good for you, but like just in this past relationship, this person may not be good for you for different reasons than some of the
Yeah.
abuses that you suffered at the hands of so-called friends in the past.
Yeah.
But but still, there were reasons why this person may not be good for you. So you do see
Yeah.
it now,
Yeah, I do. And it's like a process. It's not crisp and clear.
right?
Like I know right off the bat 110%. Sometimes I'm still questioning. You know, does
Yeah,
that make sense?
yeah, sure it does, sure it does.
Um,
Okay, thank you,
yeah.
Jen. Did you have more to add?
I did, but I lost it.
Oh
If it
no,
comes
sorry.
back up, if I remember it, I'll let you
Okay.
know.
Is someone in your life no longer a good fit? Is it possible they never were, but you just didn't see it? So, as I mentioned in answering the first question, I feel like I see it now. Now, I'm not saying that my sight is so good that one couldn't slip past my defenses, so to speak. But because I am trying to be more open, and I like that Glenn thinks like this, to be accepting of people. And back in 2017, I believe it was 2017 when Glenn and I started our relationship. I did learn a lot from Glenn. Uh, the way that he looks at things. I try to take things on board from everybody that I consider a friend, because I think there's value in that. So when he and I started talking, there this idea of accepting someone until they give you a reason not to. And if I mischaracterize that, Glenn, please feel free to correct me. I know that you do. Uh, I would like to take that on. I would like to be a person that just is openly accepting and not have my guard up with people and not
Hmm.
expect them to betray me and not expect there to be something wrong.
Yeah.
But I have to admit that there's a little bit of leeriness when I meet new people. It's not that I'm expecting the other shoe to drop or I'm looking for bad things. It's just because of the amount of times that I have been burned by people. It's just what is it? Once shot, twice shy. Is that right?
Once bitten, twice shy.
Once bitten, twice shy. Yeah, not shot.
I'm like,
Always
what?
taken it way too far. Once bitten, twice shy. Yeah, it's kind of like that. So I think I would see it now for the most part. So the second part, is it possible they never were, but you just didn't see it? Well, in the past, yes, absolutely, I've
Hmm.
admitted to that. But now, well, you know what? I think I always saw. I was talking to Jen about this, and I said I think I always saw the good and the bad in people. But the thing was, because of my desire to have friendships and to be loyal, because that's really what I wanted in return. I wanted someone to be loyal in the same way that I am. I
Yeah.
overlook red flags, and I even got into a marriage
Yeah.
for those same reasons. I tend to have a friendship with the version of them that I see as possible rather than the reality of who they are. That was pretty good. That explains it pretty well. What about you, Glenn? Is someone in your wait? Did I ask? No, I didn't.
No, you didn't. Not yet.
Is someone in your life no longer a good fit? Is it possible they never were, but you just didn't see it?
So no, I don't think so. No one, I can't think of any person who's not a good fit
Oh,
at
okay.
all.
Hmm.
No, otherwise they wouldn't be here.
Right.
It's pretty
Yeah.
simple. But I think more relevant is the comment you made, really, about trusting everybody up front.
Yeah.
Uh, how I came to that, I only sort of thought of it in retrospect, was if you come to a situation and you're just totally open and you just say, well, basically you're presenting yourself without your guard up,
Hmm.
because I think pretty well most people, if someone's got their guard up, people feel it or they'll sense it that there's that you've
Right.
got the wall up. I just said, well, leave the wall down,
Right.
and honestly, I found people to sort of, if they're going to be a deceptive sort of person or untrustworthy, that sort of says, okay, to my mind, they're more likely to declare themselves quite quickly.
Hmm.
But if they know you're guarded, they'll hold back. So
Interesting.
I think it gives them an opportunity to just be who they are. And I've always tended to find that people do declare themselves very quickly and show their
Hmm.
true colours that way.
Yeah. I like
Maybe
So
that.
it's just some people don't know how to read it.
Yeah.
potentially, yeah, but I just like that idea. Just look, here we are. It's all open. Be yourself.
All
It
the
sort of
cards on the
invites
table.
someone to be themselves, and it's amazing how they do, even if they're an asshole.
Yeah. So playing off that question a little bit, Glenn, what advice would you have for someone that has been burned or been betrayed by other people in the past to get to this place? If that's the case, to get to this place of trying to be open and not having their guards up when that seems like the most natural thing to do.
I'm not in the advice business, but I would say it's a multi.
Suggestion.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, I, I am not in that place, so therefore, all I would say, I think it's a step at a time.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think I think you can't just suddenly go from being in an abusive situation to say, I'm just going to trust everyone. I can't see how that's possible.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But I think if you can sort of analyze it and compartmentalize certain parts of yourself that are going to trust, I think you can work towards it.
Great. Thank you, Glenn. That was good.
Okay.
All right. Are we putting more effort into a relationship than what is being returned? I'll answer that one first. Are you putting more effort into a relationship than what is being returned? I have in the past, for sure. I don't feel like I'm doing that now. In fact, I am after my marriage, even before that with friendships, but certainly after my first marriage, if you can call it that. I came into a place where I was not willing to give more effort than the other person. And it's not a selfish thing. It's for me, I look at it as a balance. And part of this write up that Jen wrote, and when it comes around, I'll use it, but it's the seesaw idea of two children playing on a seesaw. And if one guy jumps off or one kid jumps off, then what happens to the kid on the other end? And that's the way I feel like some of my relationships have been, where for a while it might be a seesaw where you're up and down, you're getting along and having a good time, and then they come down and decide to hop off, and then you come plummeting to the earth and hurt your butt. Um, that's not a fun thing for me, and it's not something I enjoy, metaphorically or literally.
Yeah.
For that reason, I just think at my age, although I want to be open, if I'm in a relationship with someone that doesn't seem, it seems like I'm pursuing them and there's no pursuit at all on their end. I've done that enough.
Yeah.
So brief example, I'm still friends with this guy. I have a current friend. His name is Chris, and we were single buddies together, drinking buddies, and we had a lot of fun, and that was kind of the backbone of a relationship. And we would occasionally have deeper conversations, things like that. But that's really, I have other friends for that, so I wasn't expecting that really from Chris. But he got married, and I was still single, and we still kind of hung out from time to time back then. But then he had a kid and had a family. Single guy, hang out with the family. For that reason, we just kind of stopped hanging out, and that was okay with me. But back in the day when we were single guys, if he wanted to go drinking, then he would pursue me. But if it was me inviting him to go see a movie or do something else, come to a family event, things like that. Sometimes he'd say he would come and then not show up. This happened a lot with him. So I felt like I was pursuing him more than he pursued me. So in this idea of the question, are they putting more effort? Are you putting more effort in the relationship than what's being returned? That is a clear example to me, looking at the past, that I was doing that. I was putting more effort into it than he was. Now, some of you hearing the way I've described this friendship, they might say, "Well, what were you expecting? If you're just drinking buddies, what more is there?" Well, again, you have to remember that I describe myself as someone that wants to be in relationship with people, and I want them to see that I'm loyal, and I want them to be loyal in return. And I want as much out of the relationship as I can get. And for me, that means doing things together, not just drinking. And so I feel like I wanted more than that in that friendship. And you can't make people be what you want them to be.
Nope.
If you come to a place where, hey, it's okay with Chris that we do these things, but I'm not expecting things that I do with other friends that are totally content to go see a movie or talk about books or talk about life. I have friends that are willing to do that. So I think for me at this point, I kind of categorize my friends and I use them not in terms of taking advantage of someone, but using the relationship, using the different types of friends for different needs. Now, fortunately, with Jen, and I'm not going to embarrass her, but I'll just say that I call her my best friend because with her, it's not categorized. So far, I haven't found a way in which we don't get along well. I can talk to her about anything. It can be a shallow topic, it can be a deep topic. And so now I think I look at all my friendships through the prism of the one I have with Jen, and maybe that's unfair to them, uh, but
Hmm.
that's true for me. Particularly in the idea of authentic and open, honest relationships. Now I use that prism for all my friendships because I don't feel like anything else is worth me putting effort into in the first place. So, in other words, if a person is not willing to be authentic and open, with me as a friend, they're lower on my list for that. And so I think a lot of people fit in that category for me. So I only have a few really close relationships with people that I would consider are at least trying to be authentic and open. And there's my long answer.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Jen, what about you? Are you putting more effort into a relationship than what is being returned?
My answer's similar to yours. I think I used to quite a bit. Like I keep thinking like 98% was like before. But now just having kind of gathered a self-esteem, and self-worth, getting that back after abuse, it's very helpful. And so just the relationships I have now, they're ones that are more balanced on the seesaw that we were talking about.
Right,
It's not flipped to one side like it's been with most of my relationships in my life.
right.
So that's good. It means I'm
Yeah,
growing and learning.
that's right. That is
Yeah.
good. All right. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
All right, Glenn, are you putting more effort into a relationship than what is being returned? What do you think about this
Not nowadays, but boy, was I the bad news in the old
Uh-oh.
days.
one?
Bad, bad, bad news.
Tell us
Here,
about your bad
here
news,
it
Glenn.
comes. I was addicted to giving, and I didn't give a crap if I got something back or not.
Uh-huh.
Wow,
That
that's
is really bad that I'd say
Yeah.
that, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
huh.
And it took a long time to get out of it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
I
can't even
really,
picture you being like that, Glenn.
I can't picture it either. It makes
I
me want to
just
throw
tried to.
up.
I was like,
Right.
whoa, what?
But it's
Right.
true. It is absolutely 100% true. I come from a seriously codependent place,
Yeah.
and I know that my relationships in the main, I was picking relationships that were not equal, so I
That
Okay.
could
somebody was
so I
over
could
needy.
give more,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Okay.
and it's a
Huh.
huge. It's a very difficult habit to get out of. You've got
I
to,
would imagine.
yeah, it is. That's I got therapy and stuff like that and help with that.
Sure. Sure.
I couldn't I couldn't do it myself because I didn't even realize I was doing it.
Right.
It needs someone who knows a lot more than I did. It needed someone or
Yeah.
people that knew more than I did to point it out.
Yeah.
But even when they do, it's still tough
Sure.
Yeah.
because
Gosh.
it's a way of being.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of
Yeah.
exist. It's a way of existence. You're seeking out places you can feed your addiction. Like it's stuff. I don't see it's different from alcohol or cigarettes or
Oh, I would
gambling.
agree.
It's addiction.
Sure.
If not more,
Uh,
it's right up there with sugar.
Yeah.
well,
Quitting sugar.
but not nowadays. No, no, I don't have any. I don't put more effort in than being returned because nowadays, as I think I said last week, it was pointed out to me is that other people like to give too, and if you're one that is not prepared to accept, well, what's in it for them?
Right.
So it's the equality of
Wow.
the balance of giving and receiving. It really makes the
Yes.
relationship dynamic.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So,
Wonderful.
yeah,
Thank you, Glenn. That was helpful. I appreciate your response
thanks.
to that. All right. So Jen wrote, not that it has to be stringently equal, but there should be a certain ebb and flow in the relationship and not like a seesaw stuck to one side, with you giving so much that the other person taking yet rarely giving. The specific dynamic can play out in family relationships as well as romantic ones. For me, it was a message from childhood that all relationships were hinged on me proving. In what ways was I trying to prove myself and why? For me, it was giving, 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 not expecting anything in return because for me, I wasn't requiring the other person to give anything. I believed I wasn't worthy of receiving. Wow. So, it's kind of what Glenn was describing, the giving, 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 not expecting anything in return. And he says that wasn't good. And I would agree that that's not
Yeah.
good. We've all done it, I think. I mean, for the most part, I think we all have moments that we do that. Um, I saw a question. Hold on 1 second, guys. I saw a question. Where is it? I know it was in all caps. Just give me a moment. We'll find it. We'll
How do
find
we determine who is actually pursuing more? Is that
Yeah,
what you mean?
That is the one.
Huh, that's a great question.
Yeah. How do we determine who is actually pursuing more? Jen, do you want to take a shot at that or?
I'll give one example. If you're always the one reaching out to the other person, always sending a text
Yeah.
or sending a phone call, and it's unbalanced, it's not an ebb and flow with one time you call her and then she calls you, and it might get
Right.
a little intermittent. But that's one big one that I've read and heard of lately
Yeah.
when talking about this. So,
Yeah. So
what
that's
about
good.
you?
Yeah. Same thing. I mean, the same person I was talking about, Chris. So here's the difference between the way I was back then. The way I was back then, I would text him. I mean, not every day, but I would text him, "Hey, let's do something." No response. I'd try to call him, leave a message, no response. And I would just wait a little while and keep trying, and then eventually he might come out for a while. We actually became roommates later in life, and so it was different then. Obviously, we'd plan things together and things like that. But this was before that,
Yeah.
and I reached out to him all the time. And so, how did I determine? I determined because I could tell that it got to the point where I felt like I was like almost worried about it being stalking. Not, I mean, I was
Uh-oh.
waiting outside his house or anything like that, but the
Oh,
the amount
no.
of calls and text and this constant reaching out to someone and there's no response, that almost makes back then it felt like it made me more crazy that he wasn't responding. I was like, what is wrong with me that he's not
Yeah.
responding? Now, of course, now I realize it wasn't me at all. Some people are not capable of carrying on healthy relationships.
Yeah.
I wasn't a perfect person at the time, but I was capable of carrying on a healthy relationship. I believe that just knowing myself back then and looking in backwards into the annals of time,
Yeah.
the eons of time ago, uh, I would have been capable of that. Uh, I can't think of too many relationships I had that were super healthy. There were a few, but not like they are today. And that's because I've just grown and changed and matured, and so essentially, so have the kind of friends that I've been with. But getting back to the question, yes, how do you determine who's actually pushing more? I think it begins to feel uneven to you. I think when you're reaching out to someone, like Jen said, when you're reaching out to someone, and it just seems, and I don't mean like you reach out to them one time and you don't hear from them. I
Long
mean,
as it's back and forth and the roles are
yeah,
changing.
exactly. Yeah, people are busy, and sometimes I have friends that I talk to once a year, but they're good friends. So we both have our own lives, and we don't live near each other. So there isn't a need to reach out all the time. But they respond back. If I reach out to them, they respond back, and vice versa. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit different than that. All right. I think, did everyone answer that? Yeah, I was reading the question. Okay, I'm just getting my bearings again. All right. So I read the part about the seesaw. The dynamic can be played out in churches. In my past, I had desired to be used by God and serve the church. One of the byproducts I expected was that in getting involved in serving, that relationship with other people would organically happen. When this consistently didn't happen, I ended up feeling used or like something was wrong with me. I do want to talk about this briefly, the idea of churches, and I have mentioned it before. I have said in the past that when I went to Al-Anon, which is a support group for people of alcoholics, for those that don't know, families of alcoholics, individuals that know a person whose life is ruled by this particular addiction, which in this case would be alcohol. When I went there to support my mother, who was dealing with a lot of recovery from her mother, my grandmother, who was an alcoholic for many, many years, and it did affect my mother's life. And in fact, some of the effects of that trickled down to me through my mother. Just some of the damage that was done to her because of this trickled down. So my mother was wanting to heal that. And there was a lot of benefit to those rooms, people sitting around a table. They're all there for a reason. They've all been affected by something horrible. Everyone has a different story, but they're actually there. If someone took the time to go sit at those tables, they had an investment in it somehow. And because of that, they were willing to share openly. And you would think that in churches, of course, it should be just common knowledge that being a part of a church, they'll have good conversations. People are willing to be, share their struggles, and these relationships with other people should organically happen, like Jen wrote in the description. But it doesn't. I'm not saying there's no churches. How could I say that? I haven't visited every church in the world, but my experience with different churches is there's a certain level of pretending like things are the way they should be. But when it comes down to it, there's a lot of broken people in churches, and that's the way it should be. Where else can a broken person go if not to a church? But there's not that same level. I saw a discrepancy in the way that things were handled at the Al Anon group, with people being open and sharing from stories from their lives, and I got a lot of benefit out of that, more so than being part of a church group. And my point is, that's not the way it should be. But it does play out, as Jen said. This dynamic does play out in churches, giving more than you're getting back. And then so I hear someone would say, "Well, you're supposed to be giving. You're supposed to be a servant, biblically speaking." Jesus calls us to follow his example, and his example was that he was a servant. He came to serve the first time around. He came to serve people, and he did. And we're supposed to show love to people. I'm not espousing anything different than that. The point is also that a church should be a place where the sheep, which is us, the congregation, comes to be led by a shepherd, which should be the pastor. And in the hierarchy that is set up by the early church, there are deacons, or people that are not pastors, but they serve the sheep. They're providing a service, whether it's spiritual knowledge or getting food for people that are hungry, giving shelter to people that need a place to stay. And there are churches that do that, but are they being serviced uh, in the way that they're supposed to? I don't know. That's up for debate. Everyone has their own story of their church, which is doing all these things. So that's great. If that's the case with you, that's wonderful. I'm just saying that I have experienced where there seems to be a lot of things missing in that, and certainly. Uh, my point is, yes, we're supposed to give, but if we're in a church where we feel like we're just giving, and there's nothing being given back by way of spiritual nourishment, things like that, there it should be a question mark. Is this the place for me? Is it the place that I'm supposed to be?
Yeah.
Am I able to be giving to other people in this environment? Those are all questions you have to ask. Okay. The dynamic can be played out within families. In my relationship with family, I love to love them, encourage them, accept them, and I haven't felt like that has been equally given in return. What I've experienced is a family who judges me, who are critical slash judgmental, who speak discouraging comments instead of encouraging ones. I have become a person who keeps the focus on them and their lives, but gets incredibly nervous when they ask me questions about me and my life due to their preceding questions and comments. I want my family to know me deep down, but my fear of judgment keeps me from opening up. So, as a result of that, the question is, why do we have friendships? Is it about what we can get or what we can give? And is it right to expect a friend to give it all? Jen, would you like to answer the little patch of questions?
Okay, which one is it? The
Why do we have friendships? Is the
okay.
first part. Is it about what we get or what we can give? And is it right to expect a friend to give it all?
Why do we have friendships? Companionship.
Sure.
I think one of the most amazing things about friendships when you're healing in the same direction, uh, you help each other grow. It's like this, what is like a perpetual motor? It, it just clicks back and forth to each person, and you just teach each other things by being
Sure.
in friendship. Okay, I didn't know if it went blank. Are we out of time? No, we're not. I was just checking. I thought I
Uh,
lost you guys. It got quiet.
no, no, we're all no. I'm still here. I think Glenn will probably post it in the chat.
Okay.
not to interrupt your thought, but I just will remind people that we will at some point 6 minutes. Okay, in six
Okay, cool,
minutes,
cool.
roughly 6 minutes, we'll have to switch over to the another chat. So there'll be a moment of silence, and then we'll be back. So
All
I
right. Thanks,
appreciate
Glenn.
those that can stick around. Would 5 minutes? Okay, so we'll just have Jen finish answering this first patch of questions, and then on the other side, Glenn and I will answer. So why you were explaining why do we have friendships, and then the second part, is it about what we can get or what we can give, Jen?
Um, I do feel like I think a great place to start as a person is coming from a place of giving.
Hmm.
I think if your initial intent is to take, I don't think that's a very good thing.
Right,
But I think once you get into a friendship or a relationship with somebody, there tends to be that natural ebb and flow, the give and
right,
take. It's not something that's agreed upon before, a contract
right,
written and signed, you
right.
know, like
The
it's
contract,
just it's just organic and it just happens. And it works.
yeah, yeah,
And you don't think about it because it works, you
right.
know?
Good point.
Um, I think when you're in these friendships or relationships where it is lopsided, um, I think sometimes people can get into that ruminating place where they're like, "Am I giving too much? Am I giving too little? Like,
Yeah,
what's going on their end?" And you just start that hamster wheel.
yeah. Not to mention it sucks you dry.
Yeah, yeah, because
I
you're
mean, it.
giving, and
Yeah,
then thinking that if I give a little more, maybe I'll finally get something back, and you don't even realize it's going on. And it stems from that unworthiness, that feeling, well, I'm not really worthy of receiving anything, but I love giving, and other people are more worthy of
yeah,
getting than
sure,
I am. So I'm just going to give, 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 give.
sure.
So,
I'll say more when this question comes along to me, but yeah, you definitely sparked some good thoughts there on that.
yeah.
So the last one before we switch over, is it right to expect a friend to give it all?
Hmm. You know, I can't. I can't answer this one straight up because I have Glenn in my head.
Oh, yeah, he says just yeah, you shouldn't expect anything in return. Yeah,
Oh man, this could get really philosophical.
it could.
I'm not going to go there though.
Okay, okay,
But is it right to expect a friend to give it all? It's strange because I think it's a part of the give and take as a friendship, because it's not just one person in a friendship, it's two people, you
yeah,
know. Um there should be some natural give and take so that
yeah.
it's not lopsided.
Hmm.
Um so I'm
Well,
like,
do you
what's
see
my
what Jamie
point?
said? Did you
What?
see what Jamie said in the chat?
Yes. Well, nope, that's not it.
Yeah, that's it. Yes, the worthy thing.
The
She's
worthy thing.
referring back to what you said about being worthy earlier in the writing.
Oh, yep.
You're worthy of
Yeah.
someone giving.
Yeah, and I think I think my stuttering with answering to this question is my, um when you come from a place where you're like, "Yeah, I would like for someone to give
Yeah,
for me." It seems very selfish, and
it's
I'm
slippery.
still like, "Is it? Is
It's
it not?"
slippery. Yeah,
It is a slippery slope,
yeah.
yeah. It makes me nervous, my palms are sweaty.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like,
Do you see? Do you see the many reasons why I like this woman? Everyone. All right, so we're going to go ahead and switch over, and then when we come back, Glenn and I will take a shot at this little patch of questions here. So just hang around with us, guys, if you can, and we'll be back here shortly.
For some reason, the meat not coming up on the capture. Okay, let's see what's going on. Oh, that one's going to come off. Let's try again.
All right.
We're just getting there, but it takes a minute to. There it is. Takes a while to come up.
Okay.
It's out of my control, and we're just about
Sure.
getting
Sure.
there. We're going.
All right. All right. Thanks for waiting around. For those of you that are still here, thank you. It looks like everyone's still here. Thank you guys for hanging out. Again, I apologize for that little delay that we have to do because we only have a certain amount of time with the Google Meet, and we haven't figured out a way to do it that's doesn't cost a bunch of money for us to do this little show. So, obviously we're doing this as a labor of love, but they want quite a bit of money, and each of us would have to pay a subscription price in order to do it. I think it's what, $15 a month, Glenn?
For each person.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
can't remember now. It's too long ago.
Something like $15 a month for each person. So we're not able to do that. All right. So let's get back into it. We definitely want to try to finish on time, get you guys back to your Sunday night. Which, by the way, I didn't mention this, but Kelly Ann Dean mentioned she's fully aware that it's Halloween. We had a visitor, and Jen even put a sign on the door because we're not involved in the trick
We're
or
old
treating.
fogies.
Yeah, we don't, oh, they're cute with their costumes. Yeah, well, my nieces and nephew, they're getting older, but when they would dress up and do their Halloween, I would ooh and ah at their costumes and things like that, and I think it's cute. But I'm at the point where I don't want to go buy a bunch of candy and have a bunch of people knock on the door. Sorry, I'm just not into it, and neither is Jen. I don't think that's unfair of me to say. But we still had a visitor anyway. She put a sign on the door just saying, "Hey, like we're working and don't
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 knock
knock,
on the
don't
door.
knock." Well, certain person didn't. Maybe they didn't know how to read. Maybe it was a
I don't
small kid
know.
unattended with an adult that was knocking on the door.
I think it was like the knock and run kids. Like, look, this old lady put a sign on her door.
Old
Do
lady,
not knock. So we're gonna knock and run off.
right? Right, exactly.
Then I was like, let's take it down. That was a terrible idea.
It wasn't a terrible idea.
It
People
was like
should,
asking for it. It's like the
yeah.
sign, like kick me, on the sign.
Oh, right, right. Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, I think
I'm a nerd. I
you were
love
trying to put a deterrent, and it didn't
it.
work.
No, it was like a deterrent that was actually an attractant.
Right, right,
That's
exactly.
hilarious. The
Maybe,
the can,
maybe,
the can was mislabeled.
maybe nobody would have knocked had you not put a sign on the door. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
All right. Anyway, back to it. So I'll answer this one next. So why do we have friendships? I like Jen's answer. Companionship, camaraderie. I think that we're made to be people to have friendships. They've done studies on isolation. Of course, I don't know if they've done voluntary. They probably have done voluntary isolation rather than the kind they do in prison, where you've done something wrong and they put you in the hole all by
Oh,
yourself, and
jeez.
that does happen. And they've done studies on what happens to the people. And some people have been in there for a long time and they go crazy. They're just alone with their own thoughts in a small room. I think I understand what would make you crazy about that. But they have done studies of this, and it's not good for people. Even a person that would consider themselves that they don't need relationships, that they're a loner, and they can handle that. Well, maybe there are some people that can, but for the most part, we need friendships. That's the point. We're social creatures in general, regardless of what your religious beliefs are or how we got here. Socially, these experiments have kind of proved this idea out that we want to be part of community, we want to have relationships, and that's one of the biggest reasons why we have friendships. Now, I would say the reasons I have friendships have changed. They have morphed as I've morphed and changed and grown. Back then, I was way more of a social creature in that I wanted to be out all the time, listen to music, play darts, play pool, drink a couple beers, couple shots. That was who I was as a person. And I loved the part of it I loved, though, wasn't just the drinking. it was being around other people, and it was kind of exciting. And when I was younger, and now it's not that I don't ever want to go do something or go out, but we pretty much stay at home. Maybe that's a sign of being older. Maybe it's a sign of being more mature. I don't know, but my
Hmm,
reasons for having friendships are just much different now. It's more, I like
that's a good
friendships
point.
where we can talk about things, we can have conversations. We're going to talk more about this, but the give and take and growing together, that point's coming up. So I'll leave that for then. The next part, is it about what we can get or what we can give? I really am a giver, and I always have been. Now, I have probably not the extent that Glenn described earlier, but I have had relationships where I have given more than I got back. But I didn't have a huge expect. I wanted something. I wanted there to be some give and take, but I was way more comfortable giving. I still am.
Yeah.
I would give to someone without expecting anything in return, and I have done that. And it's not a pat on the back, that a boy kind of situation. It's just being honest about who I am as a person. So yeah, I think it's better to give without expecting anything in return. But in friendships, I feel like it's a little bit different. Again, we come to that concept of what are we worthy of? Well, I think we're worthy in friendships of getting something back out of it. Why else would you? I mean, you can be a friend to someone, but is it a friend if you're just helping someone that's going through a rough time? Yeah, I suppose it's being a friend, but it may be a different type of friendship where you're giving and they're taking, but it's because they need something.
Yeah.
There are other people that are just all the time needy and they don't ever seem to give. That's a different situation. Do you want to be friends with someone that's just all the time needy and they don't ever seem to learn from their mistakes? They don't ever seem to find a way to nourish themselves. You have to make a decision at some point what's best
Yeah.
for you in that type of relationship. All right. Lastly, is it right to expect a friend to give it all? Yes, absolutely. Jamie said in the chat, referring to something Jen said in the write up about her being worthy. She is worthy of having a good friend that gives something in return. Not as a gimme, gimme, gimme like a child does. Give me my toy back, give me my candy back. Not like that, but knowing that you deserve your friends, people in your relationship, to give to you. Otherwise, it is lopsided. You've got a
Good point.
emotional or spiritual vampire that's just sucking the life out of you. And when you spend time with that person, you feel depleted because they are taking something from you. And it's different. Each person takes something different from you, but they're taking something. What I like are the friendships where you're giving to them, they're giving back to you. So you don't feel depleted at the end of it. When you spend time with them, you don't feel like, oh
Yeah.
my
You feel
gosh.
energized.
Yeah, you feel energized because they're giving something back. That's the way it should work, in my opinion. But
Should be
that's not
mutual
always the way
giving.
it works. Mutual giving. Yeah, that's what
Hmm.
it comes down to. Well, I didn't go blather on too long with that one. All right. How about you, Glenn? It's a three-part question. I can ask it in sections, or if you want to, answer how you want to answer. But the first part is, why do we have friendships?
Well, since I don't have many people I'd call friends as such, why? I'll probably just share things that you've got in common,
Okay.
common interests,
Okay.
etc. Like I'm
Yeah.
Is
more
it
friends.
about? Oh, sorry.
Please, no, you
My
go, please.
apology. Is it about what we can get or what we can give? These friendships.
Well, I was going to divert a little bit
Okay.
to this town, which is 1,200 people. Now, I don't have what I since we've been here, what, 4 or 5 years.
Right.
There's no one in this town that I would consider friend,
Okay.
but I have a very strong sense of community. So
Oh, yeah.
therefore, there's a lot of people that I'm like, you would say, close in a community from a community point of view. And I think the word is really what can we contribute,
Mhm. Okay.
which seems
Yeah.
to me much more relevant to me to have people that we all chip in, like the neighbours come over and help me when I need help, and I go help them, and it's so if you like that you could call it friendship, but I just maybe label it or call it community.
I would agree with
Um,
you. I would agree. The way you described it was perfect. Not to interrupt, I want you to finish. But as far as community goes, yeah, when I talked about enjoying sociology classes, and we had that marriage and family, and I learned a lot about community. And what you're describing there, it seems like it's a dying art. Community is. People are, at least here, people are more separated. You can live in an apartment building and not meet your neighbors. But the way I grew up was you knew who your neighbors were. You know, you did things with them. They had block parties where people would all get together and cook food and play games. Kids would play games, and it was a community. I very rarely ever see that anymore. So yeah, I think what you're saying is true. Friendship is a little bit different than community, but it's still, I would consider it on a certain level of friends and community, even if it's not like a one-on-one relationship. It's maybe a friendship with the community. I don't know.
No, I'm not quite sure how you put it,
Yeah,
but you find that there the elements of friendship do exist with the
right.
cooperation, etc.,
Mhm.
etc. That
Yeah,
people look out for you and they do stuff like this, as you would if you were one to one
right.
with
Yeah,
someone
good point.
else. So yeah,
So, is it right to expect a friend to give it all?
it sort of sounds like an oxymoron. Why would I have a friend who wouldn't give in the first place?
I love how
Yeah,
you put
right?
things. I really do love how you put things sometimes. Sometimes you seem like the way that you answer something, and I'm sure you don't mean to do this, but the way that you answer sometimes it just makes the question seem obsolete altogether because it should be common
You do
sense.
that a lot, Glenn.
Yeah, it should be common sense. The way you answer is like, well, of course, it should. Yeah, isn't the word in there friend? I mean, there should be some giving. There should be there should be an expectation from each person that the person they're in a friendship with is going to give.
Well, Jen was correct in my opinion. It's automatic.
Yeah.
I don't even call it an expectation or whatever. I just say, well, it's intrinsic.
Mm,
Really, it's embedded in the relationship all the way along. So
Yeah.
it should be. So playing off that question, then, if you're recognizing that it isn't intrinsic in the relationship, then that might be a red flag. Would you go that
Yeah.
far?
very much so.
Okay, well there we go.
That could go down to there with the tools section of the questions.
Why are you there? It's like
Yeah,
why it doesn't make sense to me
yeah.
because you're always going to feel that it's out of balance,
Mm,
Yeah.
and no matter what you do, it's not going to. There's there's nothing you can do
right.
really other than change, amend the
Yeah.
situation. Otherwise, why in it? Why are you in it?
hmm
Mm.
Yeah,
And
no,
I
I
no,
wonder if that addiction to giving can, unbeknownst to the people, keep them in that, even
Sure.
though there is an imbalance and maybe they even
Ooh,
see it,
ooh.
they still decide to stay.
Yeah.
Look, I think the question is, if you're with someone and you're addicted to giving and they get healthy, where does that leave you? If you
Ooh.
don't have to give, and if there's no place for you, the other
Yeah.
person doesn't need you to give anymore, and they become independent. What does that? Where does that leave a
Oof.
giver? Like a shag on a rock, or what? I
Where
don't
does
know. I
it leave
haven't.
a taker?
What exactly? I mean, I hadn't even considered it, but just thought about it then.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Insightful.
Do you
That is
move out and
insightful.
move on to the next, you know, the next person who is requiring or needy?
Oh, I
Yeah.
think you just described a huge section of our population, regardless of what country you live in. I know that there are people out there that live like that. They have to find someone they can give to, and sometimes they find them in people that all they do is take, and then that's where you have the codependent and the narcissist. I mean, that's the perfect example of those two things that we've done all these broadcasts. And yes, it's a label of sorts, and there's various levels of narcissism and there's various levels of codependency, but it's still this. At its bottom line, it's still this thing of someone that is an overgiver and someone that's an overtaker, and it's not good. It's definitely not good.
Well, here's a question for you: Do you expect Jen to give to you, or is it intrinsic?
It is
In
intrinsic.
exactly, that is my
That is a
point.
that is a great question. I
Yeah, we
didn't.
don't think about it, right?
We don't think about it. It's not a topic of conversation. I don't think, well, I need Jen to give more to me. That thought has never crossed my mind. And I think we came into it honestly. When I met Jen, we started out as friends, and that was a great benefit. But was more than that. I wanted, knowing Jen and seeing this light inside her, and seeing that at the time she was with someone that was trying to everything they could do, it seemed like, to snuff her light out, figuratively, metaphorically, spiritually, mentally, at least, for sure, and in some ways physically, with the overworking and things like that, trying to snuff her light out. What I wanted for her was completely unselfish. And again, this isn't a pat on the back, attaboy kind of thing for me, but I wanted her, even if were just friends. I wasn't looking at it as, at the beginning, at least. It didn't take very long before it changed for me. But at the beginning, I was looking at it as just a friendship, and I wanted to see her light be able to be utilized and to not be in this abusive place. So it was unselfish, and it was about her getting something. So no, I don't think about, that I need her to give me something. It is part of who she is as a person, and it's not something I have to ask for. It is intrinsic. It is evident and automatic, and it's a lovely thing.
Exactly. So it's basically keeps coming back to balance. It's like with Sandra. Why would I ever say, "Well, I expect you to do this or give this," when I already know innately that she's giving 100% of what she's got to give anyway? What's the
Right.
point? It's the
Right.
question is irrelevant.
Wow. Beautiful.
Thanks.
What do you want to answer that, Glenn's question, Jen?
Sure. Oh, sorry.
What? What?
Do you want to answer Glenn's question?
What was the question again? Sorry, I was in the chat
Oh no,
responding.
that's okay. Glenn was asking me, uh, do I have this? Well, see, I'm going to paraphrase it. I don't know, remember exactly how he said it, but he's basically asking me, do I have this expectation of you that you give me something, or is it natural?
Yeah, I think with you and I, it's natural. And the
Mhm.
thing that's interesting is the very fact that you're thinking about in another relationship, an unhealthy one that's off kilter, that you're even thinking about the subject of it being off that shouldn't
Yeah.
even exist
Right.
in a healthy relationship. And
Right.
that's what you and I do have. We've said many times, we've stopped and said, it just doesn't there's you don't get tired of it, you don't, burn out, there's none of that. It's
Yeah.
just easy and natural.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jen. Annie says, without expectations. Oh, I'm going to say this. We all come to a relationship with needs, both of us, and needs can change, people change. Yeah. And as
Yeah.
we've said on these broadcasts, you should be changing together. We're going to get to that point in this particular broadcast. Again, we'll keep talking about some of the same things. Hopefully, someone will benefit from it in some way, and the light will go off and go like, "Yeah, that's right." Okay, the next one. Why do we continue to hold on to relationships after we discover there isn't a healthy give and take? So this is a follow-up question to the one we just answered. Why do we continue to hold on to relationships that are unhealthy for us? So the first part, why do we continue to hold on to relationships after we discover there isn't a healthy give and take? And I'll go first. We don't, um, not anymore. Now, this is something I had to learn. I continued the story about Chuck. So that's just one example. There are others that I have, but I held on to that relationship way longer than I should have, and there wasn't a healthy give and take. I never thought about that aspect of it. I was just thinking about whether I should be friends and the damage he was causing. He wasn't a giver. I really, as I'm rolling through my mental Rolodex of things that he did for me, there's not anything in there. And I don't mean just like giving money or giving rides when needed, or I mean, none of that existed. He really was a taker. So
Yeah.
um, I wouldn't do that today. So if there wasn't a healthy give and take, it just would not be something I would engage in. But I have done it in the past and have learned from it. The second part, why do we continue to hold on to relationships that are unhealthy for us? I think addiction is a big part of it. You're getting something out of it, even if they're a vampire and you're giving. If you're a giver and they're a taker, you're getting something out of giving. I mean, that's the perfect example of that. But it can be anything. It doesn't have to be you giving. It could just be that there's something in the relationship that's unhealthy. Could be fear. Fear is a big reason why people don't leave an unhealthy relationship. And when it gets to Jen, she can talk about what made her leave her unhealthy relationship. But for me, a lot of times I would let them be the one to leave because I wasn't ever going to be that person. Even in the last marriage that I was in, I didn't leave her. I probably would have continued because of my loyalty unless I had grown and recovered enough in that relationship. It would have been very different. I feel like I was always moving toward being the person that I am now, but it might have, I imagine it would have taken longer than it has with someone who's actually healthy. But I would have, the point is, I would have held on to that relationship out of loyalty and out of, my religious beliefs or my Christianity and having the idea put into my head that even if it's unhealthy, you stay in a marriage. Now, my thoughts on that are very different, and I've shared those thoughts before. If you're in an unhealthy relationship, I don't think you stay, especially if it's abusive. Now that marriage wasn't physically abusive. She never hit me, but there were ways in which it was unhealthy, and then I gave and gave and gave, and she was definitely take her. It's not that she gave nothing, but the things that really nourished my soul, the things that should be in a lovable relationship, they didn't exist there where they do now. So I think that I gave a couple reasons. It's not an exhaustive list, but I think fear is a big one. You're afraid of what's coming, or afraid that you're not going to find something better. Afraid if it's biblical reasons, afraid people are going to ostracize you or shun you or say all these horrible things. It's like, well, she left her marriage, she got the big D, the big divorce. But a lot of times they don't bother to see, well, was she being abused? What's the reason? What's the reason he left? Um, they don't uh, pay a whole lot of attention to what's healthy and unhealthy, just the letter of the law, so to speak, as Scripture is concerned. And there's a lot more to it, in my opinion. Uh, we'll go with Jen next, if you're ready to answer. Why do we continue to hold on to relationships after we discover there isn't a healthy give and take?
There's some kind of dynamic of maybe some innate knowing. Like we know that there should be just an ebb and flow that just
Hmm.
happens. You don't have to kick it into gear or put your foot on the gas. It just is there.
Right.
And when that's lacking from the other person, I think people that have been through childhood neglect and abuse and just don't have some of the healthy boundaries that other
Right.
people do,
Uh-huh.
that they can just get stuck in this mode of proving. And you and I both have had experience with this.
Yeah.
And it's such a strange thing to look at from the outside because I don't know, it's I know I've said this before earlier, but it's like a hamster wheel. You get
Right.
stuck and you're not even looking at it from a realistic standpoint, to see it sort of from the outside and realize, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
why am I doing
Why?
this?
Yeah. Why are you holding on to this horrible, horrible thing that's not
Yeah,
beneficial to
that's
you?
off kilter.
Yeah.
I wonder if sometimes people don't know, they haven't ever experienced a friendship like that, that it
Hmm.
just intrinsically there's this ebb and flow and this give and take that's easy.
Mm, I'm sure.
And maybe there's some people that have grown up, in a a tough situation with family, and all their relationships growing up within the family have just taught them that this is how it is. It's always one-sided,
Yeah.
with whichever way.
So the second part of the question, why do we continue to hold on to relationships that are unhealthy for us? I mentioned fear as a reason.
Yeah, low self-worth, I would say.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Um, if you don't think that you're worthy of love and even friendship that has that ebb and flow,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think I know it's the unworthiness, the not feeling worthy
Right.
that keeps us. I'm trying to explain it, why it keeps us stuck. And I think there is sort of like a knee jerk reaction for us to prove, just like when someone accuses you of something, you defend yourself,
Sure. Sure.
It at least for me, I can't say that's everybody's experience, but for me, when I feel like people are treating me like crap for some reason, I just get like bent on I'm going to prove them wrong.
Sure.
So
Sure. I
sometimes
think,
that can keep us there stuck.
yeah, I think it's natural to want to prove people wrong if they have the wrong idea. And I think that's something we've been talking about recently too.
Yeah.
Um, but either way, it's unhealthy, and we shouldn't hold on to those relationships. Thank you, Jen, for sharing. And
Yeah.
I'll go to Glenn. So, Glenn, why do we continue to hold on to relationships after we discover there isn't a healthy give and take? That's the first part.
The unhealthy dynamic is greater than the healthy one.
Wow. Yeah.
I wouldn't do it,
No.
as you would, as you would expect me to say.
Sure.
No, no interest. That doesn't mean you ostracize someone or cast them out. That just means to say you are not going to have the kind of relationship that's all in with that person
Right.
because it's
Right.
not going to work. But
Right.
I was just reading the chat there. I just was wondering and thinking about, well, and there seems to be a lot of givers here. I think
Right.
we're pretty well. How difficult is it to learn to take? And now, from that's my question, because I know how difficult it was for me. I really had to be so aware of it and condition myself to take, to do it.
Yeah.
What about you
I know
guys?
there's been times for me that it's felt physically painful. That's going to sound weird, but
No, not.
where the emotional kind of tips into the physical space. You're just like,
It does. It happens. Yeah. That's
yeah,
not weird at all.
um, yeah, that's happened to me before. What about you, Jason?
What's the question?
Glenn,
We're
how'd you
just
put that?
talking about there's a lot of givers here, and I said I
Yeah.
had to condition myself to take, and it was difficult. Took a
Oh,
long
I
time to do it. How did you find it?
um yeah, it's harder for me to take than it is to give, but when it's natural, like what I'm seeing with Jen is that I have no problem taking because I'm giving and she's giving. So I don't think of it as taking. I think of it as just this is the way it's supposed to work. We're both giving to each other. Yeah, I haven't thought of it in terms of taking. Before Jen, I was very uncomfortable with taking. In fact, oh, this is a good story. So Jen likes neck rubs, and I'm happy to give them. Her neck gets stiff a lot, and talking about that physical, emotional. I hope this isn't too much, Jen. But her emotions sometimes, and she's in recovery, and she's working on a lot of old stuff, and her neck sometimes hurts. Well, she's asked me, do you ever want a neck rub? And I have realized with her asking me that, I've realized that what I haven't ever really considered someone give me a neck rub. It's not an aversion. It's just that I don't in terms of taking.
Like
Uh,
it didn't cross your mind.
right, it didn't cross my mind, and that's wrong. She gives excellent neck rubs, and it feels good, and I feel relaxed, and it's a good thing. But I don't think about asking her. So she'll ask me, "Hey, how's your neck?" And she talked about doing that, and is that okay? And yeah, it's okay. I have to work on it. So to answer your question, Glenn, I still think that I'm learning how to take, but at least with Jen, it doesn't feel like taking. It just feels like it's part of us. I have to think about that question more.
Yeah.
Uh, and really dig in to see what part of me has such a hard time um,
Do you
taking.
remember what I said to you after that? You said something about if you need a neck rub, you'll ask.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what if you want one?
Oh yeah, the
Like,
difference between need and want. Yeah.
you don't have to need one to actually want one. You can.
Right. That's great. So yeah, so I have more to work on in that area. Not thinking of it as just a need, but a want. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. Great questions. Glenn, I just want to make sure that you answer the second part of this before I move forward. Why do we continue to hold on to relationships that are unhealthy for us? It's kind of like the question above, but it's more defined. Why do we continue to hold on to relationships that are unhealthy for us?
Well,
People in
that
general, not just
I
you.
sort of answered. I said that's when the unhealthy dynamic overrules the
Okay,
healthy dynamic.
gotcha. Okay, next question. Why do people give so much without anything or very little being returned? So why do they do it? Why do we accept it when this happens? Why do we accept it when this happens? What do you think, Jen? Is that too close to the question above? I didn't notice it before, but
Yeah,
why?
it's a little bit it's a little close. And I remember seeing this last week and I was looking for it when I was going over it before
Oh,
we
okay.
posted and I couldn't find it. But yeah, I'm going to stick with my answer from above.
Yeah,
That it's
well,
lack of self-worth.
yeah, okay.
We can
Like
just skip over it if you
we'll
want.
just yeah, that's okay. So the next little blurb is friendships and relationships that do work in a healthy way are those where both people are growing in the same direction. I mentioned earlier this was coming up, and so here's the question related to that. How do we know when it's time to let go of what no longer fits? Okay, so we defined kind of what the problem is. And then so this question is saying, how do we let go? So when we get, if we didn't see it before, but now we see it, we see
Yeah.
that this relationship is unhealthy for us. This person has jumped off the other end of the seesaw one too many times, and we're done with it. So how do we do that? How do we know it's time to walk away from an unhealthy relationship? How do we decide which relationships are worth keeping and those that aren't? So those are two
Mm.
great separate questions that are in the same category. Do you want to go first, Jen? How do we
Ye-
know when it's time to let go of what no longer fits?
I've never necessarily been through this, but I can imagine there are some friendships where there's a lot of fighting. Because, okay, say one person is giving in the sense that they're going to do everything their friend wants so that they please them or
Uh-huh.
prove.
Yeah.
And when they start getting healthy, or maybe they get fed up,
Yeah.
they start setting boundaries and they start being themselves instead of morphing into someone who they think their friend's going to like or love.
Right.
And so it starts to um, rub, if you will, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess this happens in marriages too. There just is more conflict because it's rocking the boat. There's
Right.
no get going along to get along, getting along, get going along to get along. And the second part, how do we decide? Is that the one? How do we
Yeah.
decide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. How do we decide which relationships are worth keeping and those that aren't? How do we decide that?
One thing I would say is something I think you mentioned earlier about feeling drained. I
Yeah.
think that's a very good marker of if someone is healthy for you in the sense of you guys being in the same place or being in different, not the right or wrong, but just different places
Yeah.
on their journey. Is if you being around this person energizes you and it just there's that
That's good.
yeah, and then the opposite of that being someone where you're just exhausted when you leave hanging out with them or get off the phone with them.
Yeah.
It's just ugh. So
It
that's good.
just
It's a
takes
good
so much
indicator.
out of you, and it
Yeah.
is noticeable if you have any kind of self-awareness
Hmm.
whatsoever. You just notice that you're just tired and drained, and
Yeah.
it just seems like you have other friends. This might be a good thing to notice is you have other friends where you don't feel that same drain that this guy. We'll call him Mitch. So when you hang out with I don't know a Mitch. I did back in the day, and he was a genuinely nice person. I just don't know where he is. We just lost touch. But anyway, this particular version of Mitch, every time you go do something with him, you just are drained when you're done, and you're drained when it's going on. Like in the middle of it, you might even say to
Yeah.
yourself, why am I with this person? Like, this is not what I want out of life. This is not the kind of relationship that I want. You might have thoughts like that, but you're still in it. So that's a sure sign if you're feeling this energy drain, not in a mystical kind of new agey way, but just you're feeling tired and worn out after hanging out with that person. That's good. So how do we know it's time to let go of what no longer fits? Well, that's one example. I think you get little clues that come out now and then. And I think we mentioned some of them. Is it lopsided? Does it feel like that to you? Uh,
Yeah.
there's lots of relationships where there are signs that it no longer fits. It could be on the darker end. The minute she hits you, it no longer fits. There's some things that are way more obvious.
Yeah.
The difficult thing is if it's emotional stuff. It's easy to make excuses for the person that you're in a relationship with.
Yeah.
Maybe harder to see, but for this question, we're assuming that the person is already at the point where they see it. So how do you know it's time? I think it just becomes obvious. You just look for the signs, and you have to decide how many signs it takes for you to make a move. So the second part of the question is, how do we decide which relationships are worth keeping and those that aren't? Mitch is an example of someone that's not worth keeping. You might have another friend. We'll call him Bill. I don't know any Bills either, but Bill is someone that he's not draining for you, and he's a giver, and you're a giver, and there are things that you like about Bill, and he seems to want to have a friendship or relationship with you in whatever way, and there's a mutual pursuit, and feel more positive, more energized after hanging around with Bill. That might be a keeper, you
Hmm.
know. Um, so between Bill and Mitch, there's a wide divide in the way that those two relationships work for you. So you drop Mitch and keep Bill. So I think it's a process. I think it takes time for a person to realize which ones are keepers and which ones are throwbacks.
Yeah.
I think that's it for me on that question. We'll go to Glenn. How do you know when it's time to let go of what no longer fits? That's the first part.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I'm into that, how the energy feels. If I feel like they're the energy vacuum, ooh,
Right.
that you sit up and take notice. Well, I'm not going to let that happen because
Right.
I'd rather sit to the sideline than have someone just suck the life out of me. So
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
not happening.
Well,
No,
before you answer the second question, I just when we're talking about this, I mean, I use the term vampire, but it's Halloween, so you get this real image of you allowing this bloodsucker to attach to your neck and just suck the life out of you. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't willingly give into that situation. Of course, according to the lore of that, they have mystical powers and they can hypnotize you into allowing them to do that. Well, I think that's true about some of these emotional vampires. It's almost like they have these special tools that kind of mesmerize you, and they might even say nice things to you. I mean, some of them are very good at what they do, and it's intentional. Those ones are harder to keep off your neck, so to speak. Some people they have no skills. They have no skills. They're just emotional suckers, and that's all they are.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to go on too long about that, but since it's Halloween, there's your Halloween reference and a mental picture for you guys to imagine how ridiculous it would be to allow someone to do this to you. Pretty graphic description, actually. So, Glenn, how do we decide which relationships are worth keeping and those that are not?
get yourself healthy first, and then you'll know what's a good relationship and what's a poor one.
Wow, Glenn,
Great
Glenn with
advice.
the perfect one-liners. He doesn't like to give advice, so we'll call them suggestions. That's a good suggestion for sure. I agree with that 100%. Thank you. Thank
He
you for
doesn't
that.
mince words. It's
No, he
to the
doesn't. That's
point.
good. Well, I call Jen bottom line babe because she does the same thing in a different way. Glenn's way is more finesse. Jen just blurts it out and it's true. She's just boom, there it is. Bottom line, Jen. There it is. No conversation. Sometimes I don't have to go on. I'll say a sentence and then Jen will come out with her one liner point and then there's nothing else to say.
That's how I
So
feel after Glenn shares. I'm like,
Glenn and yeah, Glenn and Jen share that. I'm more I'll go on and on about something, as you guys well know. Sometimes that's why the shows go long because it'll come around to me and I'm just like blah 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 blah. On and on I go, and usually it means something, but just like I'm doing now, just as on and on. I could easily move on to the next question, and we'll finish on time, I promise. But anyway. There you go.
sorry.
Did everybody answer this one? Worth keeping and those that are not. Glenn, did you finish answering? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it did.
Okay. So the next part, from what I see, more people than not keep the bad ones because they don't have the necessary skills to identify the potentially good ones. So out of that, how do you get the necessary skills, Jen?
Therapy. And there are, I was very skeptical in the beginning with this, but there are some amazing, amazing psychologists,
Yeah.
or I always get this mixed up, psychiatrist, psychologist, uh, on YouTube.
Psychiatrists, I'll
Psychiatrist,
just really
thank you.
quickly, psychiatrists give medication and psychologists don't have a license to do that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so, um, yeah, just go and get some help. But what I was saying was that there's a lot of really, really good channels on YouTube that can help you through things.
Mhm.
But I think having a one-on-one personally, with a therapist or counselor would be really beneficial.
Yeah,
And also talking to the people in your circle that you trust, that
yeah,
are truly safe. They've been vetted.
yeah,
You know that they're safe. Sometimes it's word of mouth, Jamie. But it's word of mouth from a safe person.
yeah. Word of
Safe
mouth
and
from a
healthy
safe
person.
person.
Yeah.
That's good. Uh,
So yeah, that would be my answer to that.
that's a great answer. Now on YouTube, there are some really good ones in there. People that just slap the name life coach, and this bothers me. And I'm not going to go. I promise I'm not going to go on a rant for a long time. But
I'll
just
make
be
sure you
careful. Yeah, yeah. Just be careful. There are people that call themselves life coach, and they have no training whatsoever. But anybody can do a YouTube broadcast.
Yeah.
There's a lot of value in it. I'm not saying there's not. Just be careful. Just
Yeah.
if you have any questions about that, Jen or myself, we can help steer you in the right direction to at least get you started
With
with
someone who's reputable.
videos that you don't have to have interaction with anybody. You can just watch these videos with someone that is vetted, and there's a lot of benefit in that. There are groups, as Jen mentioned, there are quote unquote support groups out there, and they are very valuable. I've gotten value from it, even though I'm not necessarily from an abusive relationship. Being with Jen, who has gone through that, I've gotten a lot of benefit out of watching her comments and people's comments to her comments in there, and seen a lot of valuable information to help me understand what it's like for someone that's coming out of an abusive relationship. It helps me be a better husband and a better best friend. So even if you're not in one of these relationships, there are groups and there's information out there for you to get. So that answers. That's my follow up to how do you get the necessary skills. Jen, how do you identify that you need new skills?
Ah, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, but
Yeah,
nothing
insanity.
changes. I think everyone has a rope, and from each person to person, it's a different length.
Yeah,
Because that whole saying, you get to the end of your rope, everybody has an end of their rope.
right.
Um,
Wow, that's good.
and if you can, I mean, I guess some people could get to the end of their rope and then continue on to suffer.
Yeah.
I guess it's a possibility, but I do feel like everybody has a breaking point, and it usually makes itself known. It's not something you can necessarily like stuff down and ignore. It just is there. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but getting to the end of your rope,
Yeah,
and
you
that
are
can look
explaining.
differently with any person, each person to
Sure,
person.
sure.
But that's my answer.
Yeah, so basically you're saying that each person will come to the point where they're done and they'll be able to recognize that
Yeah.
the end of their rope, so to speak. They'll be able to.
Yes. I think that can be an awakening place where someone's eyes are opened somehow, being at the end of their rope, and they
Mhm.
realize, okay, this needs to change. I can't
Right,
keep doing this.
right. Gotcha.
And so that spurs you on to get help. It spurs you on to uh, realize that the tools that you have in life to get you along are just not working.
Right.
I need some new tools.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. My toolbox, I've got a hammer and a screwdriver that doesn't fit any of the screws in my house. I need some new tools.
exactly,
Yeah, gotcha.
exactly. Something
Okay,
needs to change.
thank you, Jen. Glenn put in the chat he wants to ask me a question about this. So before I answer the second part, and then we're going to go to Glenn and he can answer. What's your question related to this, Glenn?
I just wonder what your mum would say if you can remember. If you've got two people who are estranged and counselling has been suggested, which would come first? The individual counselling or go straight to couple counselling?
Oh, this is a great question, and it is one I can answer. Now, I don't know what she might say specifically, the words that would come out of her mouth, but she would meet, and a lot of therapists do this. She would meet with them together the first time so that she would get an idea of kind of what, if they're coming as a couple, she would get with each of them together, get an idea of what's going on. And then she would suggest that she meet with them. If they're both willing, she would meet with one and then the other separately, without the spouse or significant other being with them. And then she would do that for a while until they felt like they were ready. And then when both were ready, if they ever both got ready, then she would move to the couples counseling. That's my opinion of the way that she would handle that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Very logical.
Yeah.
Hmm.
If I was a therapist, I would do that same thing. I would meet with them, get an idea what's going on. And again, it depends on the willingness of the two people. And that's true for anybody, any counselor, anyone that comes to you, if they're both wanting it to change and they're not just there, one trying to appease the other one, if they're willing to dive in, then you meet with each of them by themselves. I think it goes back to point you said earlier, and you've said more than once. Get yourself right first, and we've made this point several. It's the whole idea of putting the mask on yourself first before you help your neighbor. It's not selfishness. You get yourself right. Now, if you're already in a relationship with someone, how do you get yourself right? Before you start working on the marriage. Well, believe it or not, it can happen. It's a little bit more dicey than
Yeah.
if you're not in a marriage. It's harder. The biggest thing is if the other person is willing. If the other person is willing, you can do anything. You can, I believe, marriage, you can fix any broken relationship if both people are willing to actually do the work that it takes. And you can. My point is, you can navigate that, even though it might be harder. But the bottom line, work on yourself first, and do that in the relationship. And even if the other person's not willing, if it's not a necessarily quote unquote abusive relationship, but you're just not getting what you need out of it, the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to work on yourself. Glenn's absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
Not out of selfishness. It's that if you're broken I think everyone's broken. I've made that point before. We all have different levels of brokenness, in my opinion. Um, but you're only responsible for yourself. Even if you're in a marriage, you can't fix the other person. So do what you can do, which is you can work on yourself. You can work on your own past issues, find out what they are, do triage, the things that are the most painful. Sometimes it doesn't work like that. Sometimes things come when they're ready to be changed. And the thing is to be ready for that and to be ready to dive into to fixing and working on uh,
Yeah.
what's broken. Okay. So the second part that I need to answer, how do you even identify that you need new skills? I don't think I have much to add to that. I think Jen did a good job of explaining, the idea of the toolbox and seeing that some things are missing. I think a person becomes aware that you need new skills to identify it. If the relationship isn't working, and like I just said, you can only work on yourself. You need new skills. You just
Yeah.
regardless of whether there's abuse or not. Depending on the abuse, do it away. Get safe and work on it. Work on yourself. Do what you can, and then you can see from a better vantage point whether this relationship is I can't think of the word, fixable, for lack of the word I can't think of.
Salvageable.
Okay, salvageable. Yes, Jen. Thank you. Salvageable. All right, Glenn. How do you get the necessary skills? And the follow up question: how do you even identify that you need new skills?
Boy, is this a difficult question.
Oh, I love it. I love it when you say it's difficult.
Well, it is because if you're in an environment of dysfunction, you how often do people actually want to look to the side of that because they're so consumed by just surviving every day and the angst and everything that goes with being in a relationship like that. So,
Yeah.
so thinking when you're coming from a place of survival, look, the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head is just be mindful and keep your eye out for people who have that you consider have healthy relationships or mix with people that you believe are genuinely happy and authentic and see what and just take it all in.
Wow. I think that's a great suggestion.
It's a
Yeah.
start anyway.
Sure. Wonderful. All right. So the second part of it, well, I think you kind of answered it, but I'll ask it again if you have anything else to add. So the second part of it is how do you even identify that you do need new skills?
I identified it because I wanted to put my head through a wall every 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. You did have
Yeah.
more to add. That's good.
Yeah, I did. But I mean, I think innately you know something's not right, but the question becomes, are you prepared to do anything about it?
That
That's
is the
always
question.
the question. It's always the question you're going to ask yourself. Is it worth it? Or do I cop it? I just cop it. Just put up with it. You know, do I really want to make the effort to get out of this or don't I? And as we all know, to change and make the effort is in many cases like 10 times more effortful than staying in a
Yep.
situation you don't. That
Yes.
it's just easy.
Yes.
And there's a certain degree of safety in being in a bad situation.
Well,
Especially
that
when you're used to, like comfortable
Yeah,
with.
you say, oh well, it's
that
you sort of
question's coming up.
you're blasé about it. You say, oh
Yeah.
well, I suppose that's my lot. This is what it is. I have to put
Yeah.
up with it. Yada yada, and you then lead a miserable freaking existence potentially for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
not a good tool.
Yep. No.
Well, you kind of in part way answered a question coming up, so we'll skip to that, and then I'll back up to the one before, and that's okay. That's the natural way the conversation flows. So, Jen asks, "Is it not safer to stay the same?" So, in other words, uh, to stay in that relationship and don't change. I think you just answered that. So I'm not going to ask you to answer it again, but I'll ask Jen: is it not safer? On top of the way Glenn answered that question, this feeling of it being easier to stay than it is to leave. Is it not safer to stay the same? Is that not safer in general, Jen?
It
Not
feels like it.
right,
And it even may feel easier
right,
than the whole process of leaving.
right.
But if you're able, and I think this is what helped snap me out of it. If you're able to look into the future and ask yourself some hard questions, and Glenn's hard question to me was, if your husband never changes, are you going to be able to stay? and I couldn't. I just looked into the future and thought, oh my gosh, if I'm dealing with this, all of the same things that keep repeating themselves uh, in the next couple years, I'm just going to go insane.
Yeah.
Um, and I had to be honest with myself because I think leaning into the safe place in that kind of a situation, just an unhealthy one, a relationship that should end, you know. Oh crap, I lost my train of thought. Crap, what was I saying? Help me, Crips.
Uh, yeah. So we're talking about the question: is it not safer to stay the same? I was looking at the chat. I was listening to you, but I
Oh,
was
okay.
noticing something in the chat. So I normally I would be there to pick up on it and
That's
remind
okay.
you of what you
It's
were
totally
saying. But
okay. Um, so easier and safer to stay. Yeah, I think people that are just stuck in this like cycle of abuse, or they just are thinking about the here and now and what's safest in this moment,
yeah.
it's easier to stay and get wooed by that. And I was
Yep.
a couple times, and even with friendships, I was that kind of same dynamic happened. Um, but if you're looking into the future and recognizing the patterns from that relationship in the past up into the present,
Hmm.
you can kind of see, this isn't going to change.
Yeah.
Um,
I would
so
agree.
I need to go.
The other
Okay.
thing, Jen, is now you look back in retrospect with what you have now compared with what you had then, and think, well, was the
Yes.
work worth it? You say 1,000,000% it was
Oh,
worth
yeah.
it.
One
Yeah,
million percent.
yeah,
And I wonder if some people get to this other side and they're like, it wasn't worth it. I think maybe there are.
Yeah.
Maybe, I've in our support groups that we're in, I've heard people that have left marriages and they lose their kids and their house and their belongings and, because some kind of prenup or, because sometimes people go after you when you're getting divorced.
Oh, they
Um,
do. They
and you
do.
could lose everything. And I guess that kind of depends on what means the most to you. I mean,
Mm,
kids definitely, but I think about material possessions and it's like,
right.
it's just material things.
Yeah. Which fortunately you don't have much interest in.
No,
Not material stuff. I
nope.
mean, the deeper things are way more important than material stuff. But again, I
Yeah.
keep saying this: if you're not feeling safe, especially physically, but I don't see any difference between emotionally and physically. If you're not feeling safe, the best thing to do is get yourself out of the situation, and then you if there's work that can be done in the relationship, um, you can see that better from the outside. But I'll answer this one. Is it not safer to stay the same? You guys both had great answers. I can't add too much to this one. I'll just say that in my own experience, and I've told this, Jen and I have talked about this, and I've said this to her many times. There are people, I've seen it, people that will stay the same because they have many reasons why, but it feels like Jen said at the beginning, it feels safer for them to not change. My mom would have put this in the category of hard yards. It is hard to change. You're fighting against your own programming in your family of origin, the friends that you've had. Society programs you to stay the same. Don't rock the boat, especially in families. A lot of times when you've been put into a certain role in your family, there's a lot of pushback from the people when you change. So you
Yeah.
find out very quickly this is not going to be as easy as you hoped, and it
No.
might seem, as Jen said, it might seem safer to stay the same. It's difficult.
Yeah. Because
Uh,
here's the thing, sometimes you change and you're like, I've got it. I've got the skills. I have the tools. And you go in there blazing.
right,
And then the people don't celebrate with you that you're
right,
newly equipped with healthy
right,
relational skills. They're like, what the
exactly.
heck? And you end up getting met with this resistance to
Yeah,
your change. And not all the time. This is just in some relationships. But
yeah,
and that's frustrating because I think any of us that have gone through some kind of counseling and have gained this new insight or epiphany or tool, and
yeah,
you're just so eager to jump in there and use it, and then when you meet
yeah.
resistance, it's like, oh crap, wait, what?
What?
Why is this happening?
Yeah. Why is this happening?
Yeah,
Holding your arms up to the sky. Why?
exactly.
Fall on your knees. Yeah. All right, we've got 2 minutes. That was a great answer. That's a good place to go ahead and make the transition. We just have a couple more questions to get over, guys. We're not going to run too long tonight. We're very close to being done, but we'll do the chat thing one more time, and we'll be back shortly. Again, apologize for the brief pause, especially those that are listening to playback. It won't be too long. We'll be right back in a minute, guys. Thank you. All right.
Just waiting to find itself.
Sure.
It just, for some reason, it just doesn't pop up instantaneously.
Right.
So there's Jen. That's
There she is.
that's
Hello.
Hello.
okay. What are we still not there? RDF. That might be it.
Okay.
I'll just check that to be sure.
All right.
It's popping up that we're ready to go in about 5 seconds.
Okay.
Go.
All right. Thank you guys for sticking around. It looks like we didn't lose anybody, so we appreciate you guys putting up with that. I can't apologize more. We will try to work on something that doesn't make Glenn change it over so many times. So he is pretty quick at it, so it's not too long of a wait. But
Yeah.
we would like the broadcast to be more fluent and not have that, from a radio guy, or at least someone who has been in radio and understands how devastating it is to have dead air. It's a little OCD for me, but it works out okay. Thank you for your patience, is the point. All right. So we just got done. I think everyone, because Glenn started the way he answered the question, and then I answered, and then Jen answered, and what she said here a few minutes ago was really, really good. So I'm going to go back up to the question that we didn't get to from before, because I think this is an important one. It kind of leads up to the question we just answered. But if you are a codependent, then meeting another codependent is going to feel right when it should feel wrong. How do we overcome this? How do we overcome when it feels right, but it should feel wrong? How do we overcome this, Jen?
I think getting healthier, which talk therapy, talking to friends,
Right.
getting equipped
Yeah.
is just a really big one.
Yeah. I would agree.
Because codependence, I don't know if Glenn has said this before, but I will steal his phrase from earlier, being addicted to giving. Because we've mentioned that book, The Human Magnet Syndrome, and
Yes.
the guy has a scale where it's got the taker, two arrows facing away from each other on
Right.
the scale, and one side is the taker and one side is the giver.
Yeah.
And so, usually in a friendship or relationship, if it's unhealthy, you've got, this isn't always the case with unhealthy, there's other kinds of unhealthy, but you've
Yeah.
got one person on one side all the way to the giving side, and
Mhm.
then you've got the other person all the way on the very end of the taking side. So it really is a perfect match in the sense of both persons, both of their brokenness.
Yeah.
Someone's is manifesting as taking all the time, just
Yeah.
selflessly, and another person's is giving all the time.
Right.
But yeah, getting healthier is definitely a huge, and getting educated with what
Yeah.
codependency is. What are healthy what do they look like? What do healthy relationships look like? I wasn't really educated on this growing up, and so I found myself a pretty good ways into adulthood still
Right.
picking wrong people. I'm like, what's going on?
Hmm. Hmm.
Oh geez. So yeah. Getting healthy.
Yeah, getting healthy. So, in that vein, first, Jamie said most people fear change, but if you look at it as a way for things to get better, then it's not so scary. I agree with that. And then Annie said, Glenn has told me practice, practice, practice. That's what's
Yes.
helped me. And then Jamie goes back to get healthy and stop being codependent. So these are great comments, guys. And so they're saying what you're saying, Jen, and what Glenn is saying. Get healthy. Uh, that's really the thing that needs to happen, as we were talking about earlier. Work on yourself. Find the skills that you want. Identify what the problem is, and all you can do is work on yourself. Get healthy. Uh, you can break away from codependency if that's the issue. If you're just giving, 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 and it seems like everyone is taking, 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 there are ways to get out of that. It's not it doesn't have to be a life sentence, though. People do stay in the safer place and they continue in that. I use my mom for an example a lot of times, and I was telling Jen, it just seems like I don't share as much the positive things about her. I have said, that people loved her and she helped people and things like that. But she was really, when she discovered she was codependent, and she may have started out doing things the wrong way. And people do that when they first try to do this. There are mistakes that are made. They're a little overzealous, and they just know they need to get out. So they may not. They may know that they don't have the right skills and they don't have the right tools, and they want to have them so badly. I think in her case that she wanted them so badly that she didn't know how to go about it. Just like Jen was saying, you're not taught this. This isn't something they have a class for. They have a class in the Pythagorean theorem and how to do math that you'll never use in school, but there's no class on mental health, at least not to this day that I'm aware of. There's no class on healthy relationships, and most people aren't taught it at home. I would say for the most part, we wouldn't have so much dysfunction and so many narcissists in the world and so many codependent people if parents were teaching their kids these things, teaching their kids to notice red flags, teaching their kids to know when someone's a giver, or I mean, sorry, when someone's just a taker. When they see these relationships, their kid going through these types of relationships, I don't think it happens is the point. And I wish it happened more. I wish we were taught these things and better prepared to go into a world where, I mean, honestly, I'm sorry to say this, but there are a lot of wolves out there, and not just in a religious sense or a spiritual sense, but just people that will devour you if they have the chance, and people aren't prepared.
Yeah.
I think that's a
They
great
think
point.
nobody will do that.
Right.
I thought everybody had
Right.
a kind and giving heart. I
Yeah.
was in for a rude awakening. Like, what
Right.
the hell?
Right. What the hell's right?
What is this weirdness?
Yeah. Say hello to Believe on Lord Jesus Christ. Welcome. We're glad that you're here.
Yes.
Thank
Hey,
you for
believe.
stopping by. He has a question. Is codependency the same thing as dependent personality disorder?
Hmm.
Um, I think that's a great question. I haven't heard it termed like that, so I would have to look up that before I answered. It sounds similar to me, dependent personality disorder. John, I will look that
Hmm.
up myself, and I will answer that question. I know a lot about codependency, and I'm sure that psychology by this point has a different name for it, and that may be the name. I just don't know for sure. Do either of you know? Have you heard this term John uses, dependent personality disorder?
I think I may have heard it once or twice a while
No,
back.
Okay.
not me. I haven't heard of it.
Okay. So I'm sorry, John, that I can't answer that question. I will, though. I'll make sure and look into that. I don't have time in the time remaining. We want to get closed up, but thanks for your question. Okay. Um, so where were we? I didn't answer this. I'm going to make it really short. The codependent is going to meeting another codependent is going to feel right when it should feel wrong. How do we overcome this? I think Jen's answer was good enough. not it was good enough. It's like it was a great answer.
Why, thank
I
you.
don't have anything really to I don't have anything really to add to that.
Okay.
So we'll go to Glenn on this one. If you are a codependent, then meeting another codependent is going to feel right when it should feel wrong. How do you overcome this, Glenn?
Learn what codependence is. Exactly what Jen said. Really,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I,
that's what I
I
thought
concur.
too.
But I do remember in conversations with your mum, sometimes whether I was there in person or not, she'd say,
Right.
"I just had a couple in. They're codependent. It seems to be obviously it's codependence is rampant." She'd say, "I really wanted to get up and punch the guy or the woman, whoever." But she said, like, one person sits here and totally engaged and listening, and the other one's like rolling their eyes
Right.
and she said this just happens so often. There's not that many people that come as a couple that are where both of them are really genuinely interested in making a
Wow.
difference to the relationship, which is very sad.
Yeah.
So
Wow. Great. Great. Thank you, Glenn. Jamie says in chat, you can be codependent and not have a personality disorder. Now that is true without knowing the definition that John asked. I agree with Jamie. Maybe she knows what it means. She continues, it may be a spectrum just like narcissism. You have to be on the higher end for it to become a personality disorder of some kind. That's right, Jamie. I don't know if you have some background in psychology or in counseling or anything like that, but that is true about disorders in general. You know,
Yeah.
there is a spectrum. She's absolutely right about that, and I do know that. Yeah, codependency is very widespread, and as Glenn was referring to, there are people that are on a one end where it's really rampant. I think that's the word you used that my mom used, rampant. And there are people that they're a little codependent in certain areas. It could be that with most people they're not even codependent. It's one person, but even if it's one person, it's still something that can be damaging. Um, oh, Jamie said she looked it up. Okay, great. So we can take that one to the bank. All right, we're coming down to the end here, guys. The next one, did everyone answer that one? I think so. Yeah. What is the prompt for a friend to encourage someone to make the effort or decide they need help? Okay, so this is actually a good question. So if you're on the outside and you see someone and you think that they're struggling, that can be a difficult place to be in because you don't want to insert yourself into someone's life unless they're asking for it. But you're seeing these unhealthy things. I'll answer first. Well, I think it's easy if they ask you. It's easy to know how to encourage someone. Do it in the same way that we're encouraging people. If you feel like something's wrong and you want to encourage someone to get help, um, you can offer help if you know of any. As we've mentioned, there are websites, there are support groups on Facebook, there are communities of people to talk to. There's a lot of help out there for people that want it. So that's not hard to find. So, in my opinion, if you knew someone that needed help, um, I would just gently suggest ways that they can get the help that they need. Encouraging someone is easy. So it's just a matter of finding a way that it's not threatening to them to do the encouraging. Because sometimes you're trying to encourage and it comes across as you trying to solve the problem
Yeah.
for them. And a lot of people react negatively to that. And of course they should. It's not your job to solve anyone's problem, but encouraging, I can't think of a situation where if it's true encouragement that it's bad or wrong or destructive. I think that it's that word, the way it's used here, I think it's always safe to encourage someone, hopefully.
Yeah.
What do you think, Glenn? What is the prompt for a friend to encourage someone to make the effort or decide they need help?
another extremely difficult question to answer.
Yeah, these are
I
good
don't think
questions.
I can put an answer to it other than say that I'd be playing it by ear based on the situation. You did say it was a friend, so hopefully that there is an established communication between
Right,
friends.
Yeah.
Well,
right,
I
right.
think you can use that because there's hopefully an inherent trust there between the two of them. You say, look, you know, I've just noticed a couple of things. Is
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
anything? Is there anything that I can do to help you or assist
Yeah.
you or have a
Yeah.
conversation? Whatever you feel your way,
Yeah.
but don't insert yourself. That's the one thing. If people are just going to get, some people just close right up.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, very
Okay.
difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. These are great questions, Jen. See,
No, these were actually Glenn's.
well, these are Glenn's.
This little section.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
Actually, yeah, more than just a
Well,
section.
so he's saying it's a really great question. They're his questions.
Sorry, Glenn.
Or difficult
I
questions.
forgot. I forgot totally what I said, to be honest. But I know it. I'm finding it hard to answer.
Like, dang, my
Oh,
brain.
I love it. That's great.
Can I answer this question?
Yeah, you're next. Yeah, please.
Okay, I was going to use Glenn as an example. I truly was in a place that I felt like my only option to survive was if my ex-husband changed. And I was not taking any responsibility for
Right.
myself and my choices. And part of it wasn't because I was lazy or selfish or, well, you know what I mean, or pointing the finger in that way, knowing that I was doing something wrong. I mean, I kind of knew I was doing something wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint it. I was like, what the heck's going
Sure.
on? But it was Glenn who came along and asked me some really hard questions, which is a great way to approach it because you're not like giving advice,
Right.
making you're truly spurring on the person's thought process.
Sure.
And he helped me see that changing another person, it's not my job, it's not my
Right.
responsibility.
Right.
It doesn't work.
Right. Doesn't work.
And he pretty much got me to focus on me and what can I change about me? What do I have control over? I have
Yeah.
control over what I do.
Right.
And that was huge because I think pointing the finger at him the way I was, even though he was doing things that were really wrong, um, I didn't realize I was in this dance that had two people and I had the option to get off the crazy ride. I thought I was stuck. And part of that was, we've talked about this before, but part of it was due to my religious upbringing and what I was told the Bible said.
Mhm.
And I just was horrified I've always looked at myself and felt that I was the type of person that really and truly, when you say your vows, you mean them,
Right.
and incredibly loyal. And I just didn't want to be disloyal. But gosh, it was rough.
Wow. Well, thank you for
Tangent. Sorry.
sharing that. Okay. All right. Everybody answered that one. Thank you. I think everyone answered. Yep. Okay. Next one is another great one. I don't know if this is Glenn's. There's a little separation here, space between that last grouping, but either way, what do you value in friendships do you have now? What do you value in the friendships you do have now? Jen, you want to try that one? What do you value in friendships you do have now?
I'm still stuck on thinking I answered the last question wrong. Did I
Okay.
answer it correctly?
Well, I don't think it's about answering it correctly. I feel like you did. So the
Okay.
question
Okay.
was, what is the prompt for a friend to encourage someone to make the effort or decide they need help? And then you,
Okay. I
you
don't
told
think I
the story.
circled it back around, but what I was
Oh, go
trying
ahead
to
and
circle
circle it back
back to,
around. Yeah.
no, I'm sorry, I totally blanked. Was having friends that will ask you some hard questions. That was pretty
Oh,
much what
yeah.
I wanted to
Yeah,
circle
you
back
made
around
that
to.
point. Yeah, I feel
Oh,
like you
okay.
made that point without
Good
just
deal.
putting a closure on it. Yeah. So, um, yeah, I think that approach is I have shared before that at first it doesn't really happen anymore, but when you're on the receiving end of some of Glenn's questions, I'm just saying maybe just for me, I'm not going to speak for anybody else. It sometimes was irritating to me. As I've shared, the reason it was irritating wasn't because I didn't like him asking questions. It's just like I've explained, I've answered the question already in my mind. He'll ask the same question, and he does have an answer for this. He says, if I don't get the not that he's expecting a certain answer, but if he doesn't get an answer to the question he's really asking, then he'll keep asking the question. So
Yeah.
either you get frustrated and run away and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm throwing up my hands. I've already answered the question." He's not paying. or you really think about it, which is what I now that I understand how Glenn operates, not as a person totally, but certainly in question asking. uh, I will take the barrage of questions, and I know that when I see something that looks to me like a repetitive question, I know that I haven't answered it fully. So I'll go back to the drawing board, and as I over explain things, oftentimes I do the same thing with if we're chatting, and I'll type that they
Yeah.
explain it. Here's what it is, Glenn.
You know what this makes me think of? It makes me think of Glenn as this digger who has this shovel.
Yeah,
And the first time he asks a question, it's the surface
yeah,
reply. And then when he asks again, it's getting a little bit deeper.
yeah,
And I had a friend one time do this to me. I was really not okay. And I was so just conditioned. When people asked me if I was okay, I would say I'm fine and smile.
yeah,
And I remember I was in the car with this friend and he asked me that. And I said, I'm fine.
yeah,
And then he turned to me again and he said, how are you really?
yeah.
And no one had ever asked me that question before. And I got so choked up. It
Wow.
was just, and again, it's that idea of this shovel of someone taking the time to try to dig a little bit deeper and maybe get you to look at the question again and say, okay, I didn't really respond honestly, or I didn't, there's more to it than just the answer that I gave.
Yeah.
Um, it's, I don't know. And even if there's frustration, as I know you've had with
Right.
Glenn with his repetitive questions,
Sure.
sometimes I wonder if he knows, he can see that there's something more there under the surface. So I'm just going to ask again.
Yeah. I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does. He has a brilliant mind, and not saying that to get his head any bigger. It's already big enough, so doesn't need that, of course. But yeah, he's a brilliant mind, and he's seen these things in himself, and is in a place of having learned a lot, in my opinion, in his life, and he's willing to spend the time. I've seen that he's willing to spend the time if there's someone that is willing to answer the questions, and I dare say it's a ministry of sorts of his. And ministry, just in the general word of it, is you're servicing people, you're helping people, you're someone has a need, you're making suggestions, by asking questions, allowing the other person to dig in if they're willing, dig in enough to come up with their own responses and see the way they're responding. And I think, Jen, what you described is the way it worked for you. You would dig a little deeper. I like that analogy. The top layer is a kind of more of a shallow question to get you thinking, and then he just digs a little bit deeper. Anyway, it's a great process, and it's very helpful to a lot of people. On the other side, the willingness has to be there. The person has to be willing to actually dig in. Glenn can dig a hole all the way to China on his end, but if someone's not willing to chip in and be involved in their own rescue, as I've said before, then doesn't get very far. And we've known people to do that, who come around like in messenger chat, and at first they're real gung ho and they might stick around for a while, and it's okay. People come and go as they please,
Yeah.
but you have people that really seems like they're answering the questions and they're digging a little deep, and then they go away for a while, and sometimes it takes people a long time to be willing to dig deeper, to do the hard yards, to really dig into who they are. It goes back to that. Is it not safer to stay the same? Yes, it is. It's safer to stay the same. Jen, I had asked you the next question. We want to. This is fascinating material, but I'm sure people are ready to
Yeah. And
call it.
Glenn just messaged and he has somebody at the door. He wanted to know if we could wrap in 5 minutes.
Yeah, let's wrap.
Okay.
Okay, so this question: what do you value in friendships? Let's short answers on this. What do you value in friendships you do have now?
Authenticity and honesty and directness,
Okay.
being direct, and growing in the same direction. Those are my answers.
Okay, and I will just agree to those terms.
All right.
What do you value in friendships? I would add honest, authentic, open communication is huge to me,
Yeah.
and I've talked about that before. Glenn, what about you for this one? What do you value in friendships you do have now?
Integrity and everything that goes with it. Same as
Okay.
what you said.
Okay. Perfect.
Thanks.
Um, how do we know it's not unhealthy? How do we know the relationship's not unhealthy? And we'll ask you first, Glenn, since you answered the last one.
Because I'm already healthy, so I've got a pretty good idea when it's not healthy.
Well, there you go, Jen.
Sweet.
How do you know it's not unhealthy?
I think when you're beginning to switch from not knowing and then knowing,
Yeah.
it's good to have healthy people around you that you're actively practicing, like Glenn said,
Yeah.
healthy communication, healthy relationships. So it continues to educate you to where when something unhealthy comes along,
Yeah.
you can see it clearly. But when
Perfect.
something healthy comes along, you can see it clearly too.
Yeah, I'll play off both of your answers by saying that you're working on yourself. You're doing what needs to be done to get you to a healthier place. I don't think anyone's 100% healthy in every way. At least I haven't seen it with humans yet. I'm sure people can maybe get close to being 100% healthy in every possible way known to man. Um, but you'll know. My point is, you'll know as you get healthier, these things will be so much easier to see. I promise, promise, promise. The things that we're talking about, these unhealthy relationships, you'll get to the point where you'll be able to see it's unhealthy. All right, next one.
Glenn, I think needs to wrap up. Annie
Oh,
was saying that.
so Glenn, you can go ahead and go and just say a quick good night to everybody, and then Jen and I will finish it up, and I'll end it on my end. Then when you get done, you can
I
whatever.
think just keep going because I need to really turn it off from here too.
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Well, there's
Gotcha.
just one more question
Yeah,
left, and we'll
sure.
be
No worries.
done. In the friendships we have here, what's in it that makes it healthy, and why do we choose that instead of going back to what's easier and safe? So, to streamline it, in our friendships, what's in it for us that makes it healthy, and why do we choose that, the healthy relationship, instead of going back to the easier and safe, unhealthy relationship?
Because it's so much better. So much better
Okay.
in every way.
Yeah. Well, that's a good answer.
There you go.
What about you, Glenn?
I think there's a very common set of values here, which to my mind is 100% essential for being here in the first place. I think it shines through that the people here have the things I consider important.
Mm.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Glenn. And I think everyone appreciates that. Yeah, I know about you at least that. Yeah, if that wasn't the case, if that was not the case, that you wouldn't be spending your time in this endeavor at all. So that's good.
Yeah.
For me, I'll just make this really quick, and then we'll close up. It is easier to go back to the say. I liked both of your answers, and I would just agree with that. Uh, it's so much better. I love that, Jen. It's so much better. It's so much easier. It builds energy instead of takes it away. It makes your life. For me, it makes it worth living. Um,
Yeah.
Healthy relationships. I have no need for unhealthy relationships. To use what Glenn said, there's just no need for it. Don't have the energy for it.
Yeah.
So that's it. We've answered all the questions, and I'll finish up and I'll read the end of the write up again, and we'll say our goodnights, and then we're out of here. Jen says, I'm sure each of us has been touched by friendships that have ended. I now look back and wonder why I was so destroyed over a friendship/relationship that needed to end and did. In order for me to continue growing, we live, we learn, hopefully. Thanks for hanging out with us again tonight to discuss this topic. We hope that the questions we have asked here in the write up have helped you in some way to process some of your own current and past relationships and friendships. We'll see you guys next week. All right. Thank you guys for being a part of tonight's broadcast. This has been TSL, When to End Relationships. It's time to say goodbye. Two links in the description, the musical link that Jen chose for the broadcast, and also a link to the podcast or YouTube show that kind of spurred this topic on for us tonight. We'll say goodnight to everyone in the chat. Thank you for being a part of this. If you're listening to playback, thank you for stopping in. We hope you come back and listen again. If you haven't put a like in there for us, please do so and tell someone else about it. And if you get any benefit from the show at all. So thank you for being here. And Glenn, go ahead and say goodnight to the people, please. Good night.